Today on the show, you and I discuss how what's happening in Portland right now is a cautionary tale for the rest of the country.
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So did you see what's going on in Portland? This is something that's very worth paying attention to. This is something that, well, we all want to keep a close eye on, and we want to learn from the lesson that Portland is currently teaching us and apply it to how we're going through the world. Because what's going on in Portland could only be described as a bit of a cautionary tale. What exactly is going on? Well, let me back up just a little bit. Let's do some contextual background work for a moment. I knew we were in a weird spot when I got accused of being a Nazi sympathizer. Now, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know I don't really fall down on one side or another of any particular political argument. I find the left and the right to be Coke and Pepsi. Brown, sugary water that you ought not consume too much of, lest it rot your teeth, your brain, destroys your health. You should just, get on with life. I don't find the political parties to be that different. I don't find the political parties to really represent a useful set of options for us. I think it's important to be participatory in our democracy. I think that America still, as much as we've got numerous things that plague us in the year 2018, still is one of the best examples of democracy on the face of the planet. Go to places where there is not freedom, and you'll see super quick that we're maybe not as bad off as we think we are. Go to places where you're not allowed free speech. Go to places where you can get thrown in jail for speaking ill of elected officials or royalty or nobility. And then compare and contrast with what's going on in America in 2018. Plenty of which is concerning, plenty of which is worrying, plenty of which makes us angry and determined to do something. All good things, but let's for a moment recognize that America, it's still a pretty privileged place to be. But I knew there was something up, like I said, when I got called a Nazi sympathizer. Why? Why did I get called a Nazi sympathizer? Well, this is the weird part, because I was a fan of Martin Luther King. Again, perhaps it's worth backing up and getting a little context. But like I said, I don't really fall down on one side of political arguments or another. I take each individual and each issue as it comes. I think there's room for hypocrisy and corruption in Democratic and Republican parties. And I don't think that I need to toe any loyalist line which would prevent me from calling out hypocrisy, calling out corruption, calling out people doing things wrong on either side. So, therefore, I don't knee-jerk pledge allegiance to a party. I believe in you and me and America. Politicians don't really carry a lot of weight with me. I get angry, I get upset that they're not doing their jobs when my taxes and your taxes pay their salaries. I get angry, I get upset that we have a system where we can't demand that they show up at our desk because we'd like to have a word with them about how they're doing the job that we pay them to do. But overall, politicians are a whole bunch of meh. I care about you and me. Care about America. But like I said, I knew things were taking a funny turn when I got accused of being a Nazi sympathizer for being a fan of the work of Martin Luther King. What exactly happened? There's an Antifa situation where a bunch of Antifa types beat the living snot out of some Democrats. I know. Suspend your disbelief for a second. And by the way, this happened in Portland as well. Suspend your disbelief here for a second. And know that a bunch of Antifa types, Antifa being the anti-fascist folks, beat the living snot out of a Bernie Sanders supporters, left him bleeding and I think unconscious in the street because there was some sort of counter-protest situation going on between the left and the right. And a guy who was sort of left, but not left enough for Antifa, I suppose, was out in the street. A Bernie booster. Someone who is further left than the traditional Democrat in that he was all about democratic socialism, but not far left enough for Antifa. So during this protest situation, we talked about it on the show a couple months back when it happened. He was holding, as a symbol of hope, an American flag. He felt as though the American flag had been co-opted by hate groups, and he was sort of taking it back by showing up waving an American flag. Antifa type said, "Give us that flag. It's a symbol of hate." And he was like, "No, it's not. Not to me. It's a symbol of America." And I'm sort of taking it back. And then they beat the living tarnation out of him. This happened, if I'm not very much mistaken, in Portland, which kind of sort of plays into our conversation about how Portland is becoming a bit of a cautionary tale. A bit of a lesson we can all learn from. And I said, gosh, that wasn't the right thing to do. Beating this guy up. Violence is never the answer. Violence can't be the answer. We have to be enough. We have to be on enough of the same team here in America to where we're not beating the crap out of each other because a Bernie Sanders supporter won't give Antifa types his flag. And I think I was pretty vocal about how Antifa were thugs in this situation. Criminals that should be treated and prosecuted as such because they left a man bleeding in the street. Radical thought, I know. And I then said, probably the person who's made the most easily quantifiable social change when it comes to the world of equality in modern history would have been Martin Luther King. Why can't we learn from the lessons of Martin Luther King, who had a staunch doctrine of nonviolence that he preached? And it was weird because I said I like the idea of Martin Luther King's nonviolent protest, because I like the idea of peaceful resolution moving us closer toward genuine equality, because I said Martin Luther King might have had the right idea. A lot of folks on the internet, radio station listeners, called me a Nazi sympathizer. Antifa being anti-Nazi, and because I had a problem with Antifa and their violent tactics, bazinga, I was suddenly part of the Hitler Youth. Weird times, I know.
Real radio. 104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So yeah, I guess it was a real indicator that we're in a funny place in America when I was called a Nazi sympathizer. When I was branded a member of the Hitler Youth because I said that Antifa beating the living snot out of a Bernie Sanders support and leaving him bloody in the street was not the right move, and that Martin Luther King's idea of nonviolence moving people toward equality was something that I felt much more comfortable with. I feel like anytime violence plays into a situation, chances are we're getting further away from equality and further away from unity. If someone says, "You're wrong about something, jerk," are you going to listen to him right off the bat? Probably not. Probably got to double down on being right and thinking you're right. Let's remove whatever the hell the situation is. Arguing never solves anything, because I have yet to be in an argument where one person walked away and went, "You know what? You're right. I never thought about it that way." I think the only time that really happens is probably in relationships. You know that you love this person and you want to work things out. So maybe if it's a person that you are going to live in the same home with for the rest of your life, if it's that serious of a relationship, that's when you actually maybe really stop and listen to the other person's perspective. And you should do that all the time. But generally speaking, arguing doesn't necessarily tend to get you anywhere. Arguing tends to make people double down on what they believe. If you walk up to someone and say, you're wrong, but let's remove politics from this. Let's remove race and religion from this. Let's remove all the hot button issues of the day from this situation. Let's say, no, sports gets a little political. So let's, music. I love Beastie Boys. I love the Police. These are my two favorite bands in order. Beastie Boys and Police. Say I am wearing a Police shirt. Someone walks up to me and goes, hey, guess what? The Police suck. Am I going to say, I never thought of it in your way? Yeah, they're insipid reggae music combined with Sting's songwriting sensibilities. And their mass appeal really grinds my gears. The Police suck. Take that shirt off. It's offensive to me. Am I going to take my Police shirt off? No, I'm not. I'm going to be like, whatever, man. You suck. You're a moron. I don't know what band you say you like, but let me tell you now, I think they suck too. How about that? That's where arguing gets you. Now, if the guy runs up to me and says, take that Police shirt off, that band sucks. Sting's general songwriting sensibilities that have managed to move the masses, I find them insipid and tiresome, and I hate the way they combined punk rock and reggae music and jazz in the 70s to create something that was truly unique. Take that Police shirt off now. No, I won't do it. Well, I'm going to punch you in the face then. Is this going to make me listen to what he has to say about my favorite band not being his favorite band? No. And it seems like a lame-brained analogy to make, but it's really that simple. You can't win an argument. You can't change someone's mind with your fists. You can threaten. You can make people fearful. You can make people scared of you. You can make people want to avoid you, but you can't change someone's minds with your fists. So, this is why I'm a fan of Martin Luther King. This is why let's be real here. Martin Luther King has genuine results. The ideas of Martin Luther King garnered some success. There was real measurable, quantifiable change brought about by Martin Luther King and his idea of staunch nonviolence. But when I got called a Nazi sympathizer because Antifa were beating the crap out of Bernie Sanders supporters for not being left enough and saying that this is not the way forward, this doesn't do any of us any good, because Antifa are essentially anti-Nazi, and I had a problem with them, I must be part of the Hitler Youth. I must be a Nazi sympathizer. I must be a white supremacist on the sly. And I got all this grief from people online and people that were listening to the show and people that noted a couple things, that I'm white, that I'm blonde, that I'm Anglo-Saxon. All these things that I don't think about ever at all. But all of a sudden, because I thought Martin Luther King had the right idea, I was essentially Hitler's wet dream. It was a very weird thing to happen. And, I'm not such a thin person. I've got broad enough psychological shoulders that none of this really bothered me. And I was able to dismiss it for the nonsense that it was. But it was surprising to find out that that's where we were. So there you have it. We're in a weird spot. And this is why the city of Portland is currently an excellent cautionary tale for the rest of us to take a look at. The city of Portland is a place where there's something up, something that we do not associate with the mellowness and friendliness and general good nature and appreciation of all things green that we've associated with Portland in our mind. So did you hear what happened with this guy, the head of Portland's police union, who, by the way, not that it should matter, but it does, is a black man. The head of Portland's police union is all sorts of upset and has spoken on behalf of the police officers of Portland to the city council there, saying you have to take action. You have to take action against protesters when they devolve into violence. Because there's been an awful lot of violence in Portland. Now, I don't know why that is. Portland seems to be, it's gone from being this like mellow, chill, laid back place to the scene of a lot of clashes between extremists. The white supremacy, you will not replace us morons. Those knuckle draggers seem to like to go to Portland and mix it up with Antifa and white supremacist types. There's warring factions within the white supremacists that have mixed it up in Portland. There's warring factions within the left. You know, you're a Bernie supporter. You're not left enough for us. Give us that flag. No? Oh, yeah? Whack. There's a lot of... Well, Portland has become ground zero for a lot of what can only be described as political violence, which is so strange because, you know, it's traditionally a very liberal place. It's a place where it's like New York, or it's like Houston, or it's like California, where the vast majority of the residents in that city believe a certain thing and vote a certain way. You know, and it's really interesting. The purple states, the purple cities, the ones aren't red or blue. That's where you seem to see less of this stuff. Maybe if there's enough people around you, I mean, I've always said this, maybe if there's enough people around you that believe differently than you start to realize that not all of them are evil a-holes that hate America. So you start to be a little bit more tolerant. Maybe it's true, like we've said time and time again on this show, that prejudice is broken down by contact. I don't know. But it's a strange thing that Portland has become ground zero for such phenomenal amounts of politically and sociologically motivated violence, when on paper, a lot of folks in Portland all believe the same thing. Getting together to agree with each other would appear to be the order of the day in cities like Portland, but it's not. For some reason, like I said, it's become a hotbed of political violence. And the police are having a very hard time doing their jobs because, well, this political violence, weirdly enough, has the tacit approval of the politicians that it seems to be benefiting. More on this next. Can't wait to tell you what the head of Portland's police union is demanding.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland.
All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So, you know, as you and I were saying, it's weird what's going on in Portland. I mean, here's this place that's supposed to be a haven for liberals. Here's this place where ideologically everyone is much more on the same page than they are in other parts of the world. And it just supports my theory that the difference is what makes us stronger. The difference is what makes us able to coexist and get along. You get around a bunch of people that only think, talk, and act and behave the way you do. Well, anything else that looks different is going to be, well, harder to process, harder to understand, easier to be afraid of. Hate exists better in a vacuum. I've seen it happen time and time again in the various cities that I've called home in America. I mean, I'm from New York. New York City is, well, people think in one way in the Northeast. I mean, not as a rule, but generally speaking, it's pretty fair to imagine that from New York City all the way up to Massachusetts. When you swing a cat, you're going to hit a liberal Democrat. And then I moved to Houston, which is the exact polar opposite. But having spent more and more time in a city like San Diego, where I'm on a couple different radio stations, I see it. I see it in action. I see the fact that there are very different folks. There are politically divided folks that live right next door together in San Diego, because San Diego is an interesting town. You have a huge military contingent plunked down in the middle of hippy-dippy tofu sprout eating California. And all of a sudden, politics become much less of an issue. I mean, people are passionate, people are impassioned, people are divided, people are all up in arms about politics in much the same way that they are over the rest of the country. But I don't see it get into daily life as much. I don't see as much hate when I'm in San Diego. Because if your neighbor voted differently than you and they loan you their lawnmower, or they might be really hot, or whatever the case may be, it's less of a viable proposition to stay mad at them. Contact destroys prejudice. So I guess it sort of makes sense that in a city where you have this kind of groupthink that you have in places like Portland, where everybody's already sort of in agreement with each other, that there would be a certain amount of conflict. Because when you live around a bunch of people that look, talk, think, act, and behave the way you do, it doesn't teach you how to get along with others as well. It doesn't teach you how to respond to people that are different than you as effectively. So, for whatever reason, we can't really put our finger on it exactly. We've got some viable theories. But for whatever reason, Portland has become ground zero for a lot of political violence. And boy, has it put the police there in a tough situation, to the point where this past Monday just gone by, I believe it was, the head of Portland's police union demanded that the city council take action against the violent protesters in the city, saying Portland has become one of the most politically violent cities in America. Demanding that city council do something about this. There's an article on Oregon Live, and they're there. They're in the thick of it. They're in the fray. They're living what this head of the police union has been talking about. And in Portland, they say the mayor, along with the city council, basically endorses Antifa. Now, look. Antifa is a weird thing. Maybe you're an Antifa member. Maybe the anti-fascist sentiment of Antifa speaks to you. Antifa is one of those things, though, where you can slap a label on it, and it's not necessarily really clear what it is. You can say you're anti-fascist. Well, good. The vast majority of the rest of the world is anti-fascist. We've seen fascism. We know it's unbelievably ugly. We know it's led to genocide. We know it's led to incredible human costs. We know that fascism must be stopped wherever you're in a position to stop it. So saying I'm anti-fascist, well, it's basically like saying I like puppies. Of course you like puppies. Everybody likes puppies. Of course you're anti-fascist. Everybody's anti-fascist. But that blanket assumption that because something is anti-fascist, it's good, and all the behaviors of the people that are part of this organization are things that we should condone, well, that's where it gets a little sticky. You slap an easy-to-like label, like anti-fascist, on something, and it sort of puts blinders on people when it comes to paying attention to their real behavior. And look, this is a lesson for each and every one of us to be learned from what's going on in Portland. The right has its own version of it. The right has its own version of, well, all they were saying is that they really, really like other white people. Hold on, that you're talking about the KKK. Right, they love white people. That's not, no. All they're saying is they love white people. No, shut up. Don't buy into this garbage, but they vote. Oh, okay. The same thing exists on the left, but is a little bit tougher and more insidious and more difficult to root out. Because people like the KKK, well, we know that's wrong and bad and evil and horrible. But if you say we're anti-fascist, we're anti the KKK. Oh, okay, that sounds all right to me. But weren't you the people that beat the living snot out of a Bernie Sanders supporter and left him lying bloody in the street because he wouldn't give you his American flag, which he was holding up as a symbol of hope? But we're anti-fascist. That doesn't make the other part of it okay. But there's a tacit approval and a reticence on the part of politicians, especially liberal politicians, because there's so much gray area and confusion around the idea of Antifa and groups like that. There's a reticence on the part of politicians to condemn violence. And so that's put cops in a very, very difficult situation. In Portland, like I said, the mayor, along with the city council, whether it's in an outspoken manner or whether it's in a tacit manner, they kind of endorse Antifa and its activities. And it's an easy thing to endorse. I'm against fascism. Okay, well, okay. Sounds like they're doing very important work. But because they endorse Antifa, whether it's in an open manner or a tacit, understood way, they're not willing to go after them and punish them properly for their actions, which have been, in the past, violent. This, of course, has resulted in escalating violence. People are violent. They go to jail for it. Other folks are less apt to mimic their behavior. People are violent. They get away with it. That catchy little tagline, punch a Nazi. And by the way, I understand the intrinsic appeal of wanting to throat punch Nazis. I get it. I understand it. I got it. Yes. But that catchy little tagline that incites violence picks up some steam. People see other people acting in a violent manner and not being punished appropriately. Well, it results in escalating violence. And that is why Portland, peaceful, laid back, pot smoking, whatever man Portland, has become a hotbed of political violence. That's the secret sauce. That's how that situation was made. The president of the Portland Police Association has had enough, and he's calling on council members, saying, quote, quit sitting on your hands. Condemn the violence. Daryl Turner said that the culture of enablement, restriction of enforcement, criticism of police when we act and criticism of police when we don't act, along with an overemphasis on de-escalation and disengagement, has led us to our present unacceptable situation. He said Portland has become one of the most politically violent cities in America. How did it happen? Well, we talked about how it happened, but Portland is now one of the most politically violent cities in America. After refusing to act for more than a year, Mayor Ted Wheeler is seeking council support for an emergency ordinance that would allow the city to restrict the time, location, and manner of protest. So there you go. Because you can't just call it what it is and say, hey, don't be violent. Stop hitting that person. No, you're not going to. Okay, you're going to freaking jail. Now, all of a sudden, we're getting to this bizarre police state situation where protests are being restricted. Time, location, these things are being restricted because they couldn't get a handle on it. And now, in many ways, it's too late. So what have we learned from Portland? I guess what we've learned is something that we learned when in the 6th grade, but we seem to need a pitiful reminder of in 2018. Violence is never the answer.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So Megyn Kelly has apologized for suggesting that when she was a kid, it was okay to go in blackface to Halloween. Did not realize she was that freaking old. What the hell, man? What the hell? What exactly went down? In case you missed it, in case you missed her apology, we'll get into it in just a little bit. Right now, though, speaking of Halloween being troublesome in some ways, here's comedian Emily Raskowski talking about what it was like being a heavy kid on Halloween.
I had an epiphany. I realized if you're a heavy woman, which I am, you guys probably can't tell because my outfit's like super flattering, right? So I realized if you're a heavy woman and you dress in costume as a celebrity, people will often think you're like a different fat celebrity with similar hair. Case in point, when I was a kid for Halloween, I went as Cleopatra, knocked on my neighbor's door, trick or treat. He goes, "Oh, Roseanne, great costume." My parents laughed too. I was a real indignant kid too. I was like, I have a plastic snake on my head. He goes, "I remember that episode. You look terrific. Take an extra Kit Kat. You were going to anyway." And I took it.
You know, it kind of segues neatly into our first and incredibly hard-hitting piece of news about the woman who admitted that she secretly fattened up her bridesmaids. Yeah, the thing about Megyn Kelly saying blackface was okay, well, we'll get into that a little later on in the show, but, well, nothing about this woman's story sounds psychotic. Nope, nothing at all. There's a woman in Australia named Penny. And she just shared the story of what she did before her wedding to try and guarantee that she would look better than her bridesmaids, her older sister Maggie, and her younger sister Charlie. This is the sort of thing that family does to each other. Like, I read the headline here, I was like, I bet they were all related. Because, well, it'd be really something to do that to, I don't know, your sorority sister or your best friend growing up. But the fact that she did this to family members, that somehow, well, it doesn't excuse it, but it makes it less surprising to me. Penny said that in the months leading up to the wedding, she'd make them breakfast smoothies every single day. And she said they were, quote, slimming smoothies. So all three of them would look skinny, ripped, toned, shredded, in shape for the wedding. They would look their best. But, so jacked up. She was secretly putting in a triple serving of weight gain powder from a bodybuilding shop in her sister's drinks to plump them up so she'd look skinnier next to them in photos. And you know what? Her plan worked. Yeah. They both gained enough weight that they had to have their dresses altered to fit. So Penny said that when she looks at her wedding photos now, quote, "I sometimes feel a twinge of guilt, but mostly I'm happy." It's unreal, unfreaking believable, unconscionable that you're messing with somebody's health in that way. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I'm looking at the pictures now. Wow, they really are bigger than she is. Okay. The Red Sox won Game 1 of the World Series, but more importantly, everybody got free tacos. The Red Sox won Game 1 of the World Series this past night, just gone by. They beat the Dodgers 8-4. Now, if you're like me, you're happy about this. I'm not a Red Sox fan. I'm a New York Mets fan, but Chase Utley still plays for the Dodgers. It's funny. I talked with one of the sports radio people down the hall from me. And he was like, "Who do you got?" I was like, "Well, Clayton Kershaw is amazing, and I'd love to see him get a ring, but I'm Red Sox all the way because Chase Utley plays for the Dodgers, and Chase Utley broke Ruben Tejada's leg. Chase Utley's the dirtiest slider, and I don't want to see him win a World Series." And he was like, "But what if he's not even in the lineup, which he might not be?" I was like, "I don't care. I don't want him getting a freaking ring." So I am Red Sox all the way in this case, just because I can't freaking stand Chase Utley. Is that small-minded? Is that prejudicial? Yes, but you know where small-minded prejudices belong? In sports, not in politics or society. You're allowed to cling to the nonsensical allegiances that you have in the world of sports. So, yeah, go Red Sox, F Chase Utley. Anywho. If you're from Philadelphia and loved him, just loved him. Or if you're from Los Angeles and you just love him, don't take it personally, but he broke Ruben Tejada's leg using the Cobra Kai No Mercy sweep the leg approach to second base, and for that, he can never, but never be forgiven. I need to climb down off the pedestal on that one. But here's the deal. The Red Sox won Game 1 of the World Series. They beat the Dodgers 8-4, which is a big deal for everyone in Boston. But for everybody else, the big story was free, delicious tacos. Yeah, Taco Bell was doing one of their promotions where the first base runner to steal a base in the World Series would be deemed this year's taco hero, and everyone would get free tacos. It's the 7th year they've done it. It's a tradition that I rather appreciate. Mookie Betts of the Red Sox didn't waste any time getting us all free tacos. He stole a base in the first inning, securing a free Doritos Loco taco for everyone in America. And that means you get a taco, and you get a taco, and you get tacos, and you get my point. You can redeem your free taco Thursday, November 1st by visiting any participating Taco Bell location between the hours of 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. local time. No purchase is necessary. You just simply ask for the free Doritos Locos taco. Yep. Thank you, Mookie Betts. No one gets into the robbery business because they're geniuses. The idea criminal mastermind, I think, only applies to a very small fraction of the criminal society. But yeah, as it turns out, these folks are exceptionally not bright. Earlier this week, 6 guys went into an e-cigarette shop in Charleroi, Belgium, and they tried to rob the place. The owner told them that he didn't have any money, but if they came back at the end of the day, he'd have a few $1,000s or euros. And, well, they took his advice to heart. They believed him, and they actually came back. They showed up again at 5:30 when the cash register should have been significantly more full. But he told them that he didn't close for another hour. So then they came back again at 6:30, and cops were waiting in the back of the shop to arrest him when they tried to rob him. The owner said, quote, "It was like a comedy. They're being called the worst robbers in Belgium." I think they might have a shot at the world title on that one. All right. Let's get to the more significant societal concern. It does often seem as though Megyn Kelly is always sort of kicking the hornet's nest. Now she's taking heat for reminiscing about the good old days when she was a kid, when it was, and I quote, okay to dress up in blackface for Halloween. She said, quote, "You do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface on Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. But back when I was a kid, that was okay. As long as you were dressing up, it's like a character." Now, she was backing up Luann de Lesseps. Is that how you pronounce this woman's name? She's apparently one of the cast members of The Real Housewives of New York, so I'm not overly familiar with his work, but she was accused of darkening her skin to dress up as Diana Ross. And she seems to think that blackface is still okay as long as you're dressing as a character. Naturally, there was plenty of blowback on social media, including Patton Oswalt, who tweeted, quote, "Megyn, you and I are approximately the same age. Blackface was not okay when we were kids. Take it from a big-hearted boy who just wanted to show his love for Nipsey Russell on the worst Halloween of my life." There you go. And Kamau Bell reminded people about when Megyn stepped in it a few years back when she was on Fox News, insisting that Santa Claus and Jesus could only be white. So Megyn apologized after the show. In an email to her coworker, she said, "When we had the discussion about the controversy of making your face look like a different face as part of a Halloween costume, I suggested that this seemed okay if it was done as part of a holiday where people have a chance to make themselves look like others. I realize now that such behavior is indeed wrong, and I am sorry. The history of blackface in our culture is abhorrent. The wounds are too deep." You think? What amazes me is that there was no one at NBC to be like, "What'd she just say? Oh, yeah, no, that can't go out over the air. Where's the dump button? Where's the dump button? Edit it out. But no. That's what happens when you're making entirely too much money for people to be able to say no around you. What the hell, man? What the hell?